Hello and welcome to the Magical Midlife Podcast, where you get a refreshing, uplifting and optimistic perspective on life in your 40s and 50s. I'm your host, Lindsay DeSwart, and I'm delighted that you've joined us here today, so let's jump right in. Hi, it's Lindsay here. Welcome back to the Magical Midlife Podcast. So glad that you've joined us today. Today's guest, I know you're going to love. Her name is Amy Shearer, and Amy is a coach and a breath worker and an author. And I know you're going to love her story about how she moved from a high-powered retail role all the way to now doing what she does, which is very, very different. Just before we get into the episode, I just want to do a little bit of promotion for my Find Your Wings course. And the Find Your Wings course is for midlife women who are really ready to spend the next few months with some help and some guidance, clearing out some old energy, finding some new resources to make the rest of 2022 a very different year. Because if you're like most of us, you are ready for a change. So you'll find the link in the show notes to join Find Your Wings, and you will also find all of Amy's links in the show notes below. So enjoy the episode. I know you're going to love Amy, and I look forward to seeing you in the Find Your Wings group on this computer. Okay. So, hey, Amy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so lovely to meet you and to be in your energy.
Well, I am so delighted that we've connected because you just radiate this beautiful, lovely, almost like pure light. And so much, I mean, obviously the main place I've seen you is on Instagram, and I saw it, and then I've seen also your website. It's very gold and it's very shiny, and your energy is very gold and shiny. And I was like, I need to know more. So thank you for being here. I so appreciate it.
Oh, I very much appreciate the invite, and thank you for all of that. Very well received. And I love what you're doing in terms of creating this space for women to share where they are in midlife and creating a beautiful community of women to connect and tell their stories. I think telling stories is such a beautiful craft, and being able to share vulnerably parts of your own story is something that I've personally been working on for the last few years. So I think it's a beautiful thing that you're offering to the world.
Oh, thank you so much. Lovely. And I'm so glad you can be a part of it.
Yes.
Okay. So Amy, let's start off with, tell us a little bit about you, about where you sit in the world right now and what it is you put out to the world. And then we'll unravel further back and find out how you got there. Because we never just land, do we, where we are today?
No. It's definitely a journey. So to begin, I am originally from California, so the Bay Area, and was born in Walnut Creek to two very wonderful parents, very young and inexperienced parents. And they soon split. So I would spend my time between Phoenix and California, and spent pretty much all of my, adolescent life there. And then at the age of 13, moved to Indiana, and then went to college on the East Coast. And since then, I have been on the East Coast with different careers and, in different cities, and am longing eventually to get back to the West Coast, specifically, if I could, Southern California, where it's sunny and 75 most of the days, as I sit here in probably 19-degree weather with snow building up outside my window.
Yeah.
We now live in Kingston, New York, which is about 2 hours from New York City, 8 miles from Woodstock and Saugerties, which everybody obviously knows about Woodstock. And we've been coming up to the Catskills for several years. We used to live in Brooklyn, New York. We lived in Brooklyn. My husband lived in Brooklyn for 20 years in the same apartment, which is wild. Yeah. And I lived with him in that apartment for 11. And about November of last year, we decided to sell the place and move up to Kingston permanently. And it's been a beautiful adventure over the last year of becoming a homeowner and learning to navigate being in a new community.
Yes, absolutely. So, how does life in the Catskills or life in Kingston differ from life in Brooklyn?
Well, I enjoy the wildlife. I'm a big animal lover. We have bears and deer and wild turkeys and lots of rabbits that come to visit us all of the time. Right now, they're not coming as frequently because it's so cold, but
Mhm.
having that wildlife and having nature so close by, we hike in like there's tons of trails around where we live. Learning how to ski. We're actually going on a
Cool.
ski trip in 2 weeks, which will be my first ski trip ever. So I know, I probably won't be able to walk the next day, but I'm excited to cross country ski. That's what we're going to be doing is cross country skiing. It's really good for us to be immersed in nature, and I
Mhm.
think that's one of the things that we missed the most about living in Brooklyn. We lived in Brooklyn at a period of our lives where we were really social and we loved the hustle and bustle and the energy of the city. And there was a part of it that we really enjoyed. And then we got to a point where we're exhausted. Like there's
Yeah.
just so many people, there's so much noise. It's hard to get access to being able to go on a hike and be in nature. And quite honestly, living in an apartment that was less than 1,000 square feet, we were ready for more space. We were ready
Mm.
to have, especially during, the lockdown for the pandemic in New York City, it got to a point where we would love to have a little bit more space. And
Mm.
so the life up here is much slower. I think there's a lot more intention to the relationships that you create. We have a beautiful circle of friends now that we've formed over the last year. And I am starting to get to know more healers within the area and collaborating and connecting with other women that do some of the work that I do,
Mhm.
which has been really exciting.
I bet.
I also volunteer every Monday at a organization called People's Place,
Mhm.
and they are a food bank, a local food bank that also is a thrift store. So the thrift store money supports, purchasing food for the local community. And they also have a wellness center. So over the last month and a half, I've been able to meet a lot more people within the community and be able to share my experience with healing with some of the women in the community, and it's been such a powerful, beautiful experience that I've had. So
Mhm.
slower, more meaningful. At times frustrating with the house. I mean, we were
Mhm.
never, living in a co-op building, we had somebody to call when something broke. The
Yeah.
maintenance guy was a very good friend of ours. And so it's been a big learning lesson over this past year on how to maintain a house and all of the things you need to know about being a
Mm.
homeowner.
It feels very grown up, doesn't it?
It's very grown up. It's very grown up. And my husband even says, he's like, I have gained so much gray hair over this past year of stressing about the house because we've had some issues. We had a flood in our basement about 3 weeks after we moved in,
Yeah.
and water has been an ongoing challenge for us. We live on a well, and there's just been a
Mhm.
lot of different things that we've had to learn. So,
Yeah.
but it is enjoyable. I feel very connected to the home. I feel very protective of it. And I
Mhm.
feel like he has started to finally settle in to being a homeowner. Even though he'll complain about it, I know that he loves it.
Yeah.
He secretly loves
Fantastic. So if we can, let's wind back a bit.
it. Mhm.
Now I know that you're very much more into the holistic and the healing space, but that
Mhm.
wasn't always where you started out, was it?
No, no. So prior to being a life coach and a healer,
Hmm.
I was in retail, fashion retail. And I was in fashion retail for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, in New York City.
Hmm.
Before that, I had some other careers, I guess. When I graduated from college, I was in finance for about 2 years, and I was like, oh, I can't. I can't deal with this.
Yeah, fair enough.
Too much. So I joined the Peace Corps and lived in Jamaica for 2.5 years. Yeah. Total like 180 from what I had been doing.
Yeah, seriously.
I know. And then I decided when I came back, I, applied to business school and I got into business school and I was like, that doesn't feel right to me. So I went to culinary school instead and became a pastry chef and did that for a few years. And I'd always loved fashion. My mother loved to shop. I mean, I grew up, with my mother being an avid, fashionista.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a job at Anthropologie, and it was just a part-time, seasonal job for extra money as I was a pastry chef. And I fell in love with it. And I had left my career in food and went into fashion retail and was at Anthropologie for 11 years, then Kate Spade for about 2.5. And then my last position was with a company called SMCP, and they're a French brand. And I was their vice president of retail for North America. It was a very big, big position.
Yeah, seriously.
And yeah, I had a moment at the end of 2018 where I was tired. This role, as passionate as I was about getting there, as much as I had envisioned and pushed myself and done the hustle to get to a place, both in terms of leadership and financial success, I thought this was my ultimate goal, my ultimate dream, was to be in a role of this caliber. And my role was very influential. I spoke directly to the North America CEO, reported directly into him, and then was one step away from the global CEO. So I had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, seriously.
And it was exhausting. I mean, I was traveling coast to coast and was being on the retail side. I was in stores, very often. And it's, the retail environment is one of always, beating out last year's numbers and outperforming everybody's expectations. And that gets to be very wearing. So in 2018, my husband and I traveled to Hawaii for Christmas. It was amazing. It was such a beautiful, wonderful experience. The first week I was unraveling from the stress.
Yeah.
And I had just been told by my doctor that I was very close to having a hysterectomy. I had severe endometriosis. And I just had a moment of, what am I doing? I'm living my life for unrealistic expectations, and I'm always exhausted. I'm unhappy. I had just started therapy, and I felt really lonely and very despondent and felt very disconnected. And now looking back, I was just really disconnected from my spirit. I was very disconnected from the spirit that lived within me. There was no opportunity for creativity. There was no opportunity for any kind of self-expression, really. It just felt that I felt very trapped. And by the second week, I started to feel a little bit better. I wasn't sleeping all day. And I walked away from that trip deciding that it was time to end the retail career. And it was a very scary moment for so many reasons. One, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Fair enough.
This is all for 15 years. This is all that I knew. I knew the language of retail inside and out. I knew exactly what needed to happen at all times. It felt very good to know and to be very good at something. And to walk away from that felt very unsafe. And
so how old were you when you walked away from that?
I was 44.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's when a lot of people are absolutely at the peak of their career.
Yeah. Yeah. And my mother and my father always taught me as a young woman, always have your own income, be independent, don't rely on a man. I mean, it was all about, that environment of, being a self-sustaining financial person. And
I love that. The Generation X thing. You can have it all. You can be
you
it
can
all.
have it all,
Must
you must do it all, right?
Yeah.
That was the expectation. And wow, I know everybody had such good intention, but that may not have been the best recipe for all of us. And so
fair enough.
To be really honest, the hardest step was to walk away from the financial success, to walk away from that security, and to start dismantling some of that expectation around have your own money, have your own, financial success. Don't rely on, it was really like the message was don't rely on a man for you. Right.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So over the last few years, I've learned my relationship has changed with my husband in the fact that I have really needed to rely on him a bit more. And there's been a lot of healing just within that, within being able to say, okay, we are a partnership. We are, we still have separate bank accounts, but we felt very siloed from each other financially. And, him providing and being in that place of providing at times when I need it, and me being in a place of receiving has really, really connected us in a different way. So, I say that to anybody out there that might be feeling the same way, of taking that big leap and knowing that you don't have that financial security that you once had. It actually has been a very positive experience for me, and has taken me to another place in terms of my own healing, just really around money and those expectations. So yeah. And then I took some time off and became a life coach in early 2020.
Right.
And that's when right after that, everything started to shut down, and I was supporting women in terms of career choices and career pivots. And then I decided to look more into some of the healing modalities like breath work. And I had my first breath work session, and that changed so much for me. It was a big, big pivotal moment in my healing.
Okay. So that leads us very nicely into, tell us all about that then. One of the things actually that you've said that I kind of want to just reflect on is that the shift in your relationship dynamic when you actually had to open up to be a bit more vulnerable about receiving. And I think for so many of us, because we hold so much, this idea of letting go in order to let something else in is terrifying. Because as you say, you had financial independence, you had it all sorted out. You knew what was going on, you knew the career, you were managing it all. And all of a sudden you actually had to let that unravel. And I think that's the scariest part, because you don't know the next step, and you're so used to believing that you knew the next step.
Yeah. And so much of how I had lived my life prior to that was to be in complete control of everything. Being in complete control of everything kept me safe.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, that control shows up in so many ways. Being a perfectionist, being a people pleaser is a form of control.
Yeah.
And so honestly, what has helped me the most in that place of surrendering and letting go has been with breath. And as much therapy as I've been throughout my life, as much coaching and a lot of the mindset work, because I'm trained in NLP and, doing hypnosis, the body holds so much information. As much as we think everything is in our head, I never realized how much my body needed to tell me and how much my body needed to let go and express. And my first breathwork session, this is also a part of me, is that I'll sign up for something that I've never, ever done before. And I decided I'm just going to get certified in breathwork. And I had never done what they call a 3-part conscious connected breath. It's a 45-minute journey.
Right.
Which actually shifts your states of consciousness, which I had no idea. I had no idea what I was in for. Let's just say that. And so with breath, there is no, if you allow yourself to believe in the breath,
Mm-hmm.
you have to surrender. It's all about surrender, and it's all about letting yourself let go of those reins of control. And so in my first breathwork session, which was 90 minutes, I absolutely went into different states of consciousness. And I lost my mother when I was 24. So it had been 20 years since she had passed. And she and I had, I mean, we had some rough times in our relationship. And she died very suddenly. She died of a heart attack. But she was one of the first children in the United States to have open heart surgery. She was born a blue baby. She had a small hole in her heart, which back then, it's shocking that she was able to survive.
Wow.
The fact that she did. So when she was 5, she had open heart surgery, and it left this pretty gruesome scar, between her breasts, and it wrapped around her left breast onto her back. And I remember as a child, like feeling it and touching it. And she would tell me the stories. She would tell me, some of the things that she would feel. Sometimes she would feel really proud of the scar for being brave and was proud of the fact that she was very young when she had this surgery. And there were other times that she felt very ashamed of it because, there was no way, like she would wear a bathing suit and you would see the scar.
Yeah.
So during this breathwork journey, I felt her right next to me, and it'd been 20 years since I'd felt her energy.
Wow.
When she passed, I was in the Peace Corps when she died. And I didn't feel that connection. And she came, her energy was with me, and I felt her scar. Like I could feel her scar on my chest and wrapping around my back. And it was a crazy sensation.
Wow.
Now, mind you, like my involvement in spirituality and my understanding of spirituality and consciousness was so limited. I hadn't done any of the spiritual work. And this was my first experience with being in these altered states of consciousness. And I was very open to it with the breath. And I didn't know this at the time, but I'm a very good breather. So I was in this theta state for a very long period of time. And she came to me, and I had all of these revelations about my relationship with her, and understood her in a different way. It allowed me to see her and understand her pain in a different perspective. And so that was my first journey.
That's quite a profound journey.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know what to say at the end of it. Our instructor was like, so tell me, and there were no words.
Yeah.
To
totally
describe.
Speechless.
Totally speechless. So of course I've become a big advocate for breath.
Yeah, understandably.
Breath work and healing. And it's brought me to a place. So since then, I've obviously been on a lot of different journeys. And recently I've had my ancestors come forward. I've had my great grandmother, who terrified me in one of the journeys,
come really?
Forward. She's feisty. I mean, I knew her when I was very young.
Yeah.
She's an amazing woman. She was originally, I think, from Nova Scotia, and she traveled to Arizona. She was like a pioneer.
Yeah.
But she would wrestle rattlesnakes. I mean, this woman was wild. She was wild, right? So when she came to me in breathwork, and she had this cane and these big black glasses and white hair, and she came to me and just started pounding her cane on the ground and said, do the work. And it scared me so much. I stopped breathing and I sat up for a second. I'm like, okay, I'll do the work. Don't be mad, So the work has been to really start unraveling some of my own generational trauma and generational history, ancestral history, which has been a beautiful experience. And recently I've, since my both of my parents have passed, it's been years since both of them have gone, and my grandparents are all gone. And so I inherited a ton of photos and letters and report cards and, all of the things that mothers save, which is so beautiful to witness. And just recently, over this past weekend, I've taken these bins down from the attic and have started to begin the process of sorting through these photos. People I don't know, right? That I never met. And also to start to tie together some of the patterns, which is all part of that generational healing, is to recognize your place in the patterns of your history.
Yeah.
And it's profoundly rewarding. It's actually part of the healing that I've done that has felt so purposeful and so loving, because it's not just, I'm not just focusing on my own personal health and well-being. I'm focusing on the well-being of my ancestors. And it's been a beautiful experience. And breath has brought me there. Breath has created shifts that I could never have imagined, even, especially in terms of spirituality and being able to experience those things that I never thought I was gifted enough to experience, or that I never had the ability to connect with my spirit guides, or connect with my spirit animals, or connect with my ancestors. And I've learned, that is there for all of us. And
I was going to say, it's one of those things, you just think it's a gift that everybody else, or that some special people have, but it's available to all of us. But we actually have to slow down enough and focus enough on hearing the messages to allow us to tune in.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I thought the same thing. For years, I would always pay people, and I would go along and, get readings and go to all sorts of ceremonies and all sorts of things. And I was just like, if only I could do that. And it's a journey to do that, because you need to feel safe enough to listen to what's coming.
Exactly.
So fascinating that you said that too. It's like, I thought, it wasn't available to me. And then it was.
It was. And it, to your point, it took me, I needed to surrender.
Yeah.
I needed just to surrender and allow the body, stop controlling everything, I needed to surrender and to begin this healing journey of finding that safety within myself. And, the money was a safety net, the job was a place of safety for me. That career was safety, right? Yeah. I could continue on that career for as long as I wanted to. And starting to strip away some of those safety things is still, as I continue to do that work, is really important. Yeah. And it's allowed me to really open myself up and trust, which, letting go of everything that letting go of everything that you feel comfortable with is in itself, it's like the biggest trust fall you could ever do.
Yeah, and totally. It's a pretty scary business.
And breath does not allow you, once you really allow yourself to breathe and to let go, there's so much there that I learned.
It's funny just listening to you talk, because I'm finding myself that I'm not breathing, and I'm consciously having to go and breathe. Yeah. Because so many of us, our focus, when we're focusing on something, or when we're focusing on something else, I forget to breathe. And sometimes my kids will go, well, what was that huge sigh? And I said, I just had to remember to breathe. To shift that energy. So I know you run a breathing community or breathwork community, don't you?
Yes, I offer private breathwork sessions. And in February, I'm going to start rolling out more frequent breathwork journeys to the community. Right now, I do one free monthly breathwork journey for the community. And it's so rewarding in so many aspects of it.
I bet.
Building the music playlist and being in community with women from all over the country and the world, actually, I should say, is so powerful. And it's a place for so many women that feel unsafe to express themselves. I mean, to be able to start to share some of the same fears that I've had, you know,
Yeah.
and to be able to relinquish some control for themselves. And, you know, for some people, it's not for them. You know, they show up, they join, they're like, I'm not ready, or
Right.
I'm not comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. You know what's right and what's not right for you. There's a lot of other healing modalities that I also do. And I encourage many people to do what feels right for them, because that is what their body is asking for them to do. So the breath is, I mean, breath is life, right? It's the first thing that we do when we come out of the womb. So much of us have learned to restrict our breath through, you know, actually a lot of it is chemical, right? Because we're often in a state of this fight or flight, or these big surges in cortisol, which there's a lot of chemistry behind it, but it puts us into a place of breathing mostly from our chest, our upper
shallow
chest.
breathing.
The shallow breathing. As soon as you start to take really deep inhales, even just a few, I mean, I teach my clients this all the time, just taking 3 deep inhales and focusing on really expanding your lower diaphragm, or just breathing into your belly and imagining that, you're automatically dropping into your parasympathetic nervous system, which shifts you out of that fight or flight feeling. And certainly when I am caught up in, you know, in creating something or balancing my books or cooking or hosting a party where I go back into that kind of cortisol frenzy, I feel myself holding my breath and restricting my breath. Even for many of us, before we feel an emotion, before we allow ourselves to express an emotion like anger or sadness or grief or feeling shame, we often restrict that breath because we're still trying to control that emotion. But letting yourself breathe, letting yourself move that energy, as with anything, it's going to automatically start to alchemize and shift your emotions, because that's what breath does. It moves energy. It brings out stagnant energy that correlates to different emotions in your body. And so many times in these journeys, you're in full expression of a range of different feelings. And that's also beautiful. You know, I was taught, you know, as a child, I'd start to cry. I'm a big crier. Like, I'll just tell everybody here, I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm angry. That is just what I do.
Me too. Let it flow. Absolutely.
Let it flow. But as a child, we're often taught, oh, don't cry. Don't cry. You know, their well-meaning intentions was honestly to make themselves feel more comfortable. And, we're told to keep that stuff down, you know, to pack it in. And so healing in general allows you to start to unpack, you know, some of those old emotions that you stuffed down, and breathing, I have found to be one of the best ways to let go of some of that.
Yeah. It's also that connection with the different emotions. I mean, certainly, I don't know how you feel about it, but certainly I believe that women are far more in touch with sadness than they are anger. It's socially acceptable for women to be sad. And so many of us, when we're angry and we're frustrated and probably not breathing, we will go automatically to tears.
Oh, yeah.
So we're kind of, you know, it's safe for us to show sadness. But to see a woman being fumingly mad about something and actually expressing that in any safe way, it's not acceptable.
Right.
It's not socially acceptable. Whereas for men, they're allowed to be angry, but they're not allowed to be sad. You know, big men don't cry and all the rest of it.
Right. Yes, I know. And the ironic thing is that anger and sadness go hand in hand.
Totally.
They're intertwined emotions. Actually, some of the work that I do around mindset is we learn more about how you know, what brings up these emotions for you. A lot of it's programming that happens when you're very, very young.
Yeah.
And we always release certain emotions together, which is anger and sadness. You always have to work together with those because they're different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And you'll see that often too in breathwork experiences where, you know, they'll scream really loud and then tears start to cry, or even laughter, you know, even the expression of laughter, which is such a beautiful gift.
That's a
is
huge
a
release.
release, is a
Yeah.
huge release. And many of the women that I work with, once they start to really laugh, it's just waterworks.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally agree. I mean, if you'd asked me years ago, well, what makes you angry? I would have denied.
Exactly.
I would have denied that I would ever get angry, which is not true, which
Well,
is not a real thing.
and that's the thing. And I believe that's really connected to menopause as well, that we've got so much pent up anger
Mm-hmm.
that it's got to come out somewhere. And of course, the energy of anger is heat, it's fire.
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting. Now, one of the things also leading on to the menopause thing, one of the things
Mm-hmm.
also that I know you talk about is your journey with perimenopause or helping people with perimenopause. Can you
Mm-hmm.
just touch on that as well? Because obviously there's enough people who go through it and we're still just opening up the conversation about that. I
Yeah.
wish I'd known about perimenopause when I was going through perimenopause, because now
Yeah.
I think I'm far more through into the menopausal journey, maybe even coming to the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
But perimenopause for me lasted years and I had
Yeah.
no idea what was
I
going on.
know.
So
Yeah.
please talk about it. Please, let's just open up this conversation. It needs to happen.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you asked because I feel the same way. I had a lot of symptoms starting in my mid 30s
Mm-hmm.
that, I went to the doctor and I explained to her, to my OB-GYN, this is weird. Like, I'm not used to my digestion being like this. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
used to my periods being so erratic. That was before actually that I had started to get the endometriosis. The endometriosis came after a miscarriage. And, there were just things that didn't digest well with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I had greater amounts of anxiety.
Yeah.
I felt more depressed.
Yeah.
And honestly, the only thing that they would do would just hand me medication,
Yeah.
and I mean, I grew up with doctors. My grandfather was a doctor and my aunt's a nurse. And so I believe in Western medicine. I
Mm-hmm.
believe it's important. There just came a point though, where I was just like, this just doesn't feel right. I mean,
Yeah.
even these medications aren't helping me, they're
Yeah.
not helping. And so I went to start to see my therapist, who really started to help me with my anxiety. And a lot of it was letting out emotions and changing thought patterns, and being able to acknowledge and express some of these things is a huge part of being able to shift into, I think, a better mental state during
Mm-hmm.
perimenopause.
Yeah.
Even exercise changed for me. I'd exercise all the time, and I was always able to maintain a certain weight and, be able to like exercise and lose weight, and
Yeah.
nothing was happening. It's
Yeah.
like, what is happening to my
Exactly the same.
body?
Yeah.
And nobody talked about it. Nobody was open to me about it. And so I started to ask myself, okay, well, I think it has something to do with my hormones. My gut was just saying, with everything going on, it feels like there's, something happening with my hormones. And so this last year, specifically, I started to work with a naturopath and
Mm-hmm.
started to unravel some of the physical things that often occur during perimenopause. A lot of it has to do with how healthy your liver is and how healthy your liver processes estrogen. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
endometriosis is often tied to having too much estrogen in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing the work on my liver for the last year and a half has made a huge difference
Mm-hmm.
in how I feel. So I no longer drink alcohol. I eat a really clean diet, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't unlike me before. I've been pretty healthy. Being really mindful of environmental toxins has been really
Yeah.
important. I looked in the history of perimenopause, and our ancestors, they didn't have a lot of these symptoms
Exactly.
during midlife. A lot of this is due to our high levels of stress
Yeah.
and high levels of cortisol, a lot of the chemicals and, all the endocrine disruptors,
Mm-hmm.
all of that is real. And
Yeah.
that is why so many of us are feeling the physical symptoms of going through this change. I think there's some spiritual things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very natural for you to want to better understand your ancestry and better connect with your the generations before you. I think there's something spiritually connected there. I also think there's a lot of mindset and emotional work and identity work that also needs to happen. I mean, most of us, when we're young, we think about, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to have this and this and this. And then you don't ever think about what's going to happen after you're 50,
exactly.
like you don't have a vision for that. And I think I think that can be a real disadvantage, because there's so much that I've accomplished based on my visioning in life.
And nobody's encouraged to have that vision though at 50.
No.
Because society doesn't actually have a place for us then.
Right. I mean, that's what we're told.
Exactly.
That's what we're told.
Yeah.
That's not true.
No.
We actually, and the history of I've also been really into thinking about, connecting with my elder identity and like my elder archetype, and, what am I doing now to build that elder within me? And all of which is very connected to the ancestral stuff. But I've since started working with, actually, she's Canadian, a woman named Sarah Murphy, who does a lot of gut healing work. And she has me on this parasite cleanse. And I have to tell you, I know it's disgusting, but the amount of work that we've done has completely shifted how I feel. I have zero symptoms. I feel I feel so good. My stomach is finally working the way that it should.
Yeah.
I have no like endometrial like bloating. I no cramping. I have the brain fog is almost gone. I know my emotions. I don't really have the big dips, ups and downs of feelings. And, there's obviously so much tied to the gut and to the liver.
Yeah,
and
really.
So I highly recommend her. She's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. She's brilliant. And I just encourage anyone listening that's experiencing these symptoms to recognize that you don't have to feel that way. Like, I think we've normalized that perimenopause should be this horrible period in your life where you're going through all of these things and symptoms and you don't have any idea of what's going on. And that is a product of our society. And it's a product of really also, I mean, there's a book that I read called Perimenopause Power, which by Maisie Hill. She's incredible. And there was a survey done, and only 7% of doctors that were surveyed felt comfortable talking about perimenopause. Only 7%.
Oh my goodness. 7%
And honestly, like the reason they said they didn't feel comfortable was because they had no training in medical school about what to look for.
Countless times.
Yeah. So, let's change the path for our, our children and our children's children, and how we treat midlife, and especially perimenopause, because it's an incredible transition. It should be revered. You should be seen as having wisdom and knowledge. And, I mean, in ancient times, it was considered sacred.
Exactly. Stepping into the crone, the wise elder of the tribe, or whatever it may be. There was so much wisdom that was revered when we stepped into that. And now it seems to be more cloaked in shame. It's a very weird dynamic when you start really unraveling it.
It really is. It really is. So, I am in this place of, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with, my friends' children getting to this place in their life and feeling that way. It's not okay with me. It's actually not okay with me. My friends that are in their mid-30s start to fear this. I don't want them to fear it. There's nothing to fear.
I know. It's crazy. It's another phase of life. It's a new awakening.
Right. Exactly.
Indeed. Okay. So I'm just aware of time, because I always try and keep this to a journey level podcast. So you can do it with journeys. So I'm intrigued and I love what you've talked about. And I'm sure that other people want to find out more about your breath work and even how they can work with you.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
But for anybody listening, how can people find you so they can find out more about you, the work you do, the book you've co-authored?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even get a chance to talk about that. Maybe I have to invite you back again. That would be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I talk about my heart breaking open and feeling the power of my heart finally releasing a lot of pain and tragedy, and that is something that I've started to help other women with. So love to talk about divine union and my chapter in that book, which was a powerful experience. If any of you are interested in writing and have had a dream of being a published author, I highly recommend Annette and her publishing company, because she continues to do these compilations of stories and chapters and books for people to heal. It's actually a healing experience for the author as it is for the reader. So
fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. Now your book is available on your Instagram page on your website, isn't it?
Yep. It's available actually also on Amazon. So you can go directly to Amazon. It's called Divine Union. You can also, I don't think I've uploaded it on my website yet, but if you go to my Instagram, that's where I usually hang out. It's at _recreated_. And I do free monthly breath work, either the first or second Saturday of every month. I encourage you to come. There's no judgment. If you've never done it before, like I had never done it before, I'm there to explain some of the things about breath, and you'll be in a very warm and loving container with other women that are there to experience the same.
Fantastic. And if people want to go to your website, what's your website?
The website is therecreated.com.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for today. It's been an absolute joy to talk. And as I say, I would dearly love for you to come back and talk about the heart opening.
Yeah, I would love
and the
that.
other work. Yeah?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you.
leave. Oh, you're so welcome. And I so hope that people come and check out your information, and I shall be looking forward to doing a breath session with you.
Oh, yay. I love that. I cannot wait.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What did you think of the show today? If you've enjoyed it, please leave a review on whatever podcast platform that you're listening on. Also, you can come and join us at the Facebook group for The Magical Midlife. And on Instagram, if you're on Instagram, I'm under Lindsay de Swart, where you will find the podcast being released there every Wednesday. I really look forward to seeing you there and hearing your comments and any questions. And please come over to the Instagram account or to the Facebook group, where you will find downloads and free gifts to help you lead your most magical midlife. See you there.